New Englanders love to complain about our weather, especially after springs like this one. But for all the complaining that is done, we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that our weather can actually produce usable energy. The use of renewable energies, specifically wind power, has been a topic of great debate on the South Shore recently, so HinghamWeather.com decided to dig deeper to see just how effective it can be. We begin here in Hingham, where the viability of wind power was studied for a year. February 2008 to January 2009. During that time, an anemometer was placed on the landfill to record average wind speeds. The measured and extrapolated data suggested that a large 2.5 megawatt turbine would receive winds in the neighborhood of 10 to 15 miles per hour during the year, with the strongest winds occurring in the winter and the weakest during the summer. That would yield about 5.7 million kilowatt hours per year, enough to power about 600 homes. Consultants hired by the Hingham Municipal Light Plant said those types of numbers are good enough to justify building such a turbine. However, at the time of the study, the U.S. was firmly stuck in an economic rut. That had actually sent the price of non-renewable energies, such as oil and natural gas, down. So, Hingham Light decided it was not an appropriate time to pursue the landfill turbine, which would have cost upwards of $6 million. Interestingly enough, consultants said if a turbine were to be built in Hingham, Stotter's Neck, or the industrial park in South Hingham would actually be better, more efficient locations than the landfill. Now that the recession is over and the energy prices are again ticking upwards, I asked Hingham Light's Assistant General Manager, Paul Henue, if the turbine project is back on the table. The answer was no. While Hingham Light still supports clean, renewable energy, it has decided to purchase clean energy from other locations instead of erecting a turbine in Hingham. About 10% of the energy used by Hingham Light comes from renewable sources right now, including a wind farm in Maine, hydroelectric plants, and even a landfill in Randolph where gas recovery takes place. Henue says that if a turbine were to be built in Hingham, it would only produce about 1 to 2% of the town's total needs. Plus, the backlash to such a project by abutters would likely be intense. That intensity was evident when the Trustees of Reservations, a nonprofit that oversees much of Turkey Hill and Hingham, planned on building a turbine on its land in Cohasset's nearby Whitney Fair Woods. Hingham residents in the vicinity adopted the not-in-my-backyard mentality and threatened lawsuits to stop the turbine, which they claimed would cause excessive flicker, moving shadows created by rotating blades, and would lower their property values. Just a few weeks ago, Cohasset Town Meeting passed a bylaw severely limiting the height of any turbine built in their town, all but guaranteeing that no turbines will be built, so the issue was largely resolved. Although few towns have embraced green power here on the South Shore, one has. Hull has been using wind power for nearly 10 years, and now about 15% of the energy it uses comes from renewable energy. Hull's first wind turbine was built in 2001 at a cost of $822,000. Since day one, it has had a 16% return on investment for the town. A few years later, a second turbine was proposed and built at the landfill. The turbine is 3 times larger than the original and ended up costing $3.8 million, far more than anticipated. As a result, it has had a 5% rate of return. Hull Municipal Light Plant's operations manager, Richard Miller, says the turbines usually operate in 10 to 15 mile per hour winds, the same as a Hingham turbine would operate at. Interestingly enough, nor'easters and other coastal storms can actually produce too much wind for the turbines.
The storms are great until the wind reaches over 50 miles an hour, because then they shut down.
While Miller touts the wind turbines for helping to control energy costs, he says some increases will still take place since the other 85% of Hull's energy comes from other, more typical energy sources that fluctuate in price.
The wind is it's good for power stabilization more than it is for a decrease in the rate. You know, it's probably been responsible for us not going up nearly as much as we have to.
Residents naturally approve of the more stable energy prices, and in Hull, they don't even seem to have a problem with the turbines themselves. Miller says he has only received one complaint from a Hull resident about the turbines since wind power has been used in the town. However, there was a group of Hingham residents who live across the Weir River from the second turbine that threatened to sue over flicker and property value losses when that turbine was built. The one Hull resident that complained, though, said flicker in his apartment was decreasing his quality of life, but never took Hull Light up on their offer to supply dark curtains in his home. Since the town has seemingly embraced wind power, one has to wonder if more turbines will soon be cropping up. A plan to build 4 offshore wind turbines was investigated, but now seems unlikely due to the cost. And while the plans for offshore wind have somewhat stalled here in Hull, they'll continue to investigate the possibility over the next several years. Reporting from Hull for HinghamWeather.com, I'm Michael Page.